Gapping rings, not the most rewarding job in the world, but I actually find it kind of I don't know, relaxing. You kind of get in the zone. So what you do is take one of your rings. This right here is the top ring for my number 3 cylinder. So you take the top ring, in this case, the top ring, put it in there, use a piston, stick it in there so it's square in the bore. And then this gap right here, you want to measure this gap. This is the gap that I want. And I try to put it right there. You can see it does not fit. So this ring's too close together, so I need to open that gap up. The way I do that is with this. This is a ring filer. The ring sets right in here on these 2 pins to where it'll square it up, roll it over, and then you just give this a little turn. Let me show you. Alright, so we take the ring, take out there, and we set it against these pins right here, and let one side rest against this wheel. And then I'll have to hold it. On the other hand, I just crank this little wheel right here and it'll file the edge of that ring. Now if you look at it, you can tell if it'll focus. See how shiny that is right there? That's where it's been filed. And then I come back with a small file and just knock the burrs off the edges so this is smooth. That's all you want. Then we'll stick it back in here, square it up with our piston, and measure it in there, square it up, take our little filler gauge, and try to put it right in there. Oh, let me see. It's hard to see while holding the camera. And there it is. Just barely any drag on the filler gauge, so it fits just snug in there. So that you want just a hair resistance. You don't want it to be loose in there and move around. But see how, if I can get it to focus here, how it just slides right in there. It is absolutely hard to hold a camera and do this at the same time. Oh, let me look without a camera. There it is. So it just slides right in there. And there's just a little bit of drag, so that is perfect for what we want. Gapping rings is vital to an engine if you want a performance engine. One of the things we have to do when we do this is loading the rings onto the pistons. We have the top ring, middle ring, or second ring, and then this is the oil ring. Oil ring is actually 3 pieces. You use 2 of these and 1 of these, and that makes the oil ring pack. It goes in here. And then of course there's the second ring and first ring. But you just don't want the gaps in the rings to line up. Now a lot of people go through a lot of effort to try to put the rings in exactly a certain spot, like for instance oil ring and oil ring, and then top ring and second ring will be on the other side, and try to get it exact. What a lot of people don't understand is in the motor, these rings will actually move. As it goes up and down, these will actually move a little bit. As the piston moves, they will actually move around. So if you start it here, it may end up over here after it's running for a little while, or over here. None of that matters because they're all going to move. What matters is that you don't put them in line. You never want these gaps to line up. So our first real snafu here has been hit. These are low tension rings, and they're specifically, you know, low tension rings are a great ring pack, especially when you're trying to squeeze everything out of them. And it takes a so they're supposed to stack like this. So there's one that goes at the bottom, this goes in the middle, and then one goes on top. You see the problem here? There's only one of these. I already packed all these pistons up to the last one, and I'm missing a ring. Missing a ring. So once again, I have to rely on good people to help me out with something that's not their fault. These ring packs I've got, one ring missing. No real explanation. I know things like that happen. I am not upset in the least bit about the fact that it happened. But the real of it is, I'm putting the motor together. I've got file to fit rings and I'm missing one. And it's not like I can just run to the local auto parts store and buy a ring. So I reached out to somebody that is really a great guy and runs a machine shop, and I explained to him what was going on to see if he could help me work through some situations, and he said, I've got another pack of rings here for another build, and he said, bring me yours, we'll trade out, I'll send them back, and we'll swap them out, and I'll get them swapped out for the ones that are here, because this motor's no rush and yours is. So it's good to have folks like that in your life. So we're about to head out and get down the road and try to rectify a situation that had me sweating for a minute, not gonna lie. So let's get
now we got the right rings. Well, we had the right rings. Now we have all the rings we need. So we can get back to putting these things back together now and finish loading them up. Take it for what it's worth, but here's what I like to do. I like to take a piece of rubber hose and I'll cut this one in half. Slide it up over these bolts. Leave it hanging out about that much or so. And I put that on as I start pushing the pistons down in. It does two things. One, keeps the bolt from accidentally gouging the cylinder wall. But two, it will guide as it touches that crank right there. It'll guide the rod so it sits straight down on the crank and I'm not in there fighting to get it down in there. So now when it goes down in there, I don't have to worry about scratching the cylinder walls if it moves out and back, and it'll kind of self-guide itself around the crank down in there. Just a little tip, a little trick that I like to do. As you can see, this is set on here, the piston's set in there. And if we look under here, see how the rubber hose is already on each side of the crank? That's what I'm talking about. It will self-guide itself down there now so it lines up. So now I got a couple of pistons in, I'm on the second cylinder, and still I can take one finger and rotate this motor. But of course now it's getting tighter because of course there's pistons in it and there's drag on those rings. But it should still be, for a performance application, it should still be fairly smooth or fairly easy, and it should still be without a doubt smooth going up and down. So we've got another one ready to go in here, and I don't think I've mentioned this before, but if you look at your bearings, and we've got assembly lube on this one, if you look at your bearing, there is a side where there's more of the rod showing than the other side right here. That's actually chamfered, and it goes against the side of the crank, this upper side up here. It has a slight taper on it. This fits against that. If you put this side against there, she'll eat the bearings up, boys. So we need to go this side against that. I always make sure it goes in there. I got my hoses that I mentioned before on here so that it can go down in here without scraping anything. Fortunately, I can't hold the camera and do that, so let me get her stuck in there. So that piston's in, and you can see better on this cap. You can see how one side of it has this real chamfer. You know what I'm trying to say? This got this here fancy angle to it. The other side's flush with the cap. This side isn't. And you can see right here on the side of the crank how it has a corresponding. See over here? So that's what that's for. Now, aftermarket cranks, this is even more exaggerated, and they have narrowed bearings which add more space to this. But this also iterates. You can look right there and see, if the camera focus, you can see the lock right there, and then you can see the lock right here. So this end to the outside and lock the lock, you always know you're going to be right. Right down on there, and then we put our bolts on, put our ARP grease on the bolts, on our ARP big bolts, because we did put big bolts in these rods. And then torque them down to the ARP specs, which is 50 foot-pounds. Hole, boys, 8 pistons, 8 holes, all filled up. Rings, pistons, everything's in there. Now, it's just time to do everything else. But I am a stickler for tolerances, and I can guarantee you, if you measure the piston to wall clearance, every cylinder is the same. If you measure the bearing clearance on the rod bearings, every one is the same. You measure the bearing clearance on the main bearings, every one of them is the same. You won't hear the words in one of these motors, you won't hear the words, close enough, boys. No. What close enough means is it's not the same. You won't hear, that'll be all right. No, because that probably means that ain't the same either. Now, I may run my clearances a little different than some of you do, and that's okay, because there is tolerances. There is, you can have it here, you can have it here, or anywhere in between, and that's okay. I have a particular tolerance that I like to run on everything, and as much as I share with you fellas, that's one I'm not going to share. But the main point of this is that you need to make sure your tolerances is right. When you're building the bottom end, top end, it doesn't matter. But when you're building a motor, tolerances. Be anal about it. Be OCD about it. You need to make them the same. It takes a little more time, but it pays off on the backside. Hope y'all are enjoying the series. Stay tuned for the next part. Till next time, God bless you.